In the span of just a few hours, the United States military launched one of the most operationally complex and consequential strikes in modern military history. No ground troops, no drawn-out buildup, just steel, jet fuel, and precision, delivered from thousands of miles away. What you are about to read is the story of how that happened, step by step, from the tarmac at RAF Fairford to the skies over Iran. The decision to strike had already been made at the highest levels. As one senior American official made brutally clear, the United States held every card. Iran's navy was gone, its air force was gone, its leadership was gone, its anti-aircraft defenses were gone, and its missile positions were next. The military objective was unambiguous: destroy Iran's remaining offensive missile capabilities before they could be used. What followed was a masterclass in force projection, the kind that only the United States Air Force is capable of executing at this scale and distance. At Royal Air Force Station Fairford in the United Kingdom, the mission began not with drama, but with work. Mechanics descended on the B-52H Stratofortress bombers in teams, crawling over the 8 Pratt & Whitney turbofan engines on each aircraft. They opened cowling panels with practiced efficiency, running their hands and instruments along the turbine blades, checking for the hairline fractures or foreign object damage that could turn a combat mission into a catastrophe. Every bolt, every sensor, every connection was verified. This was the unglamorous foundation of air power. Not the launch, not the explosion, but the hours of methodical groundwork that made everything else possible. Ground crews drove munitions loaders called MJ-1 jammers up to the aircraft and began the process of mating 2,000-pound bombs and cruise missiles to the pylons and bomb bay. Each weapon was hoisted carefully, one at a time, then locked into position. Nothing was rushed. A B-52H can carry up to 70,000 pounds of mixed munitions, and on this mission, the load was a carefully selected combination of Mark 84 general-purpose bombs, AGM-86C conventional air-launched cruise missiles capable of striking hardened targets from over 600 miles away, and GBU-31 JDAM precision-guided weapons for the missile storage bunkers. The aircraft were being turned into flying arsenals, and the crews loading them knew exactly what was at stake. Inside the bomb bay of each B-52, the most critical piece of internal machinery was the rotary launcher, a cylindrical drum capable of holding up to 8 cruise missiles or bombs. Engineers and weapons specialists worked through the full rotation cycle of the launcher, confirming that each weapon station locked and released properly, that the electrical connections to the fire control system were clean, and that the mechanism could deliver its payload in sequence without requiring the bomb bay doors to open and close between each drop. This system is what allows a single B-52 to deliver multiple heavy weapons in rapid succession, and its reliability on this mission was non-negotiable. Every circuit was tested. Every station was cycled. The crews on the flight line did not leave until they were certain the aircraft would perform exactly as designed when it mattered most. The rotary launcher is rarely discussed in news coverage of airstrikes, but it is the mechanical heart of the B-52's offensive capability, and on this night it was functioning perfectly. While the aircraft were being loaded on the ramp, the 5-man crews were preparing themselves in the crew rooms. The flight from RAF Fairford to the target area in Iran would take approximately 4.5 hours one way, meaning the crews were looking at a mission of many hours in total. Pilots tested their oxygen masks, checking the seal, the regulator flow, and the intercom connections. They packed flight bags with water, food, maps, and mission checklists. In the cockpit, the pilot and co-pilot strapped into their side-by-side ejection seats on the upper deck and began working through the pre-flight checklist with the kind of quiet focus that comes from training so deep it becomes instinct. They entered the mission coordinates into the navigation systems, programmed the waypoints stretching from the English countryside down through Europe and the Mediterranean to Iran and back, and verified every instrument on the aircraft: altimeters, airspeed indicators, engine gauges, fuel quantity, communications radios, and terrain-following radar. Nothing was left to assumption. Below the cockpit on the lower deck, 2 other crew members took their positions in a space that looked more like a miniature command center than the interior of an aircraft. The navigator sat on the right, responsible for the aircraft's route and timing, essentially functioning as the human brain of the navigation system, constantly cross-referencing electronic readouts with planned waypoints, ready to tell the pilots to speed up, slow down, or adjust heading at a moment's notice. Beside him on the left sat the radar navigator, who was in reality the bombardier. His domain was 4 screens, and his job was one of the most technically demanding in all of military aviation. He managed the targeting systems, monitored radar returns, selected the correct weapons for each target, and would ultimately be the one to command the release at the precise moment required for accuracy. These 2 men on the lower deck would bear the most direct responsibility for whether the mission succeeded or failed. With aircraft loaded, crews briefed, and all checks complete, the order to depart was given. The 2 B-52s taxied slowly from the ramp to the runway at RAF Fairford, their enormous frames heavy with fuel and weapons. The pilots advanced all 8 throttles to take off power, and the bombers accelerated down the runway, using most of its length before the weight relented and the aircraft rotated into the sky. They climbed out over England and turned southeast, settling into the cruise configuration that would carry them across Europe and the Mediterranean toward Iran. The mission plan was direct. Fly to the target area, strike the assigned missile positions, then divert not back to England, but to Sofia Airport in Bulgaria for a precautionary refueling stop before returning to Fairford. The route was chosen for operational flexibility, giving the crews and mission planners options in the event of damage, fuel issues, or changing circumstances. When the B-52s reached the target area over Iran, the radar navigator on the lower deck assumed effective control of the aircraft's offensive action. He confirmed the target coordinates on his screens, selected the appropriate weapons for each aim point, and commanded the bomb bay doors to open. The rotary launcher began its cycle, spinning the drum to bring each weapon into position, and the bombs and cruise missiles began to fall and fly, descending toward the Iranian missile positions in rapid sequence. The radar navigator monitored each release, confirmed separation from the aircraft, and tracked the weapons toward impact. The entire sequence, from the moment the bay doors opened to the moment they closed again on an empty launcher, represented the culmination of everything: the preparation, the loading, the planning, the flight. When the last weapon left the aircraft, the mission's primary objective was complete. The bomb bay closed, the aircraft turned away. The radar navigator began his post-release assessment. The 2 B-52s were now alone over the most contested airspace in the world, beginning their return. The 2 bombers completed their strike runs and turned toward Bulgaria rather than back toward England. Although the B-52H carries enough fuel to fly from Britain to Iran and return without stopping, the mission plan had always included the Sofia diversion as a precaution and a demonstration of operational flexibility. Landing at Sofia, the crews shut down engines, took on fuel, and prepared for the final leg home. When they eventually touched down back at RAF Fairford, the drag parachutes deployed from the tails of both aircraft, large canopies that billowed out behind each bomber, bleeding off speed rapidly and shortening the rollout on the runway. Ground crews met the aircraft on the taxiway. The mission was over. But even as those 2 aircraft rolled to a stop, the machine that had launched them was already in motion for the next wave. Across the Atlantic, at an American B-52 base in the continental United States, another crew received a rapid briefing. Another bomber was needed at Fairford to sustain strike operations. The aircraft was already fueled, inspected, and loaded with ordnance for its first combat sortie from the British base. The crew loaded their gear, survival equipment, mission publications, provisions for a transatlantic crossing, and the aircraft departed. Hours into the ocean crossing, a KC-135 stratotanker appeared on the radar. The B-52 moved into position, closing carefully from below and behind, until the boom operator extended the refueling boom and made contact with the receptacle on top of the bomber's fuselage. Fuel transferred in silence above the dark Atlantic. When the tanks were full, the boom disconnected and the B-52 continued east toward England. The pipeline of air power was already being replenished before the smoke had cleared from the first strike. This is what American Global Reach looks like in practice. Not a single event, but a continuous, self-sustaining cycle of preparation, delivery, and regeneration, sustained across oceans and time zones without pause. What this operation demonstrated, above everything else, is that modern strategic air power is not simply about the moment a weapon detonates. It is about the entire system that makes that moment possible. The mechanics on the flight line in England working through the night, the navigators programming waypoints with the same quiet focus as accountants preparing a ledger, the boom operators over the Atlantic connecting 2 aircraft at 30,000 feet in the dark, and the commanders in the United States who looked at a map and said simply, "We hold the cards," from first engine turn to drag chute deployment, from loadout to landing, from the B-52 taxiing out of Fairford to the replacement crossing the Atlantic before the first crew had even landed. Every part of this operation was a demonstration of what it means to maintain the world's most capable and far-reaching military force. The mission was not just a strike on Iranian missile positions. It was a statement, delivered in the only language that cannot be misinterpreted: precision, firepower, and the willingness to use them.